Welcome to today's podcast interview. I brought on Leigh Woolard. Leigh, welcome.
Hi, Heather. Thank you for having me. Hello to your listeners.
Yes, give us a little background. Where do you live and what do you do?
So, I'm based in a beautiful country town in the centre of the UK called Harriet, or in England. And I do a lot of digital marketing for big brands, entrepreneurs, but I also then coach the owners of those businesses.
We're going to cover a lot of different things today, and I'm like, where do we even begin? But Leigh, here's what I want to talk about. I think it's a good segue just to get started. That I think whether you're a business owner or in a relationship, no matter where you're at in life, what I see a common pain point is, the lack of fulfillment and longing for more, seeking purpose. I see a lot of people have no clarity or vision, and you used to be there. So, can we talk about what it's like feeling unfulfilled and how to create clarity and vision to live your best life?
Absolutely. So, I started running a business in 2006. It was the early days of Google. We did paid advertising for some global brands. And I was doing that right up until 2019, so a good 13 years. Facebook came in the middle of that, so we also offered paid ads. We did some great work for the Mercedes Formula One team, Silver Cross, which was a big British brand, really prestigious British brand. Took them both. Silver Cross sold for 53 million in the end. So we'd done some fantastic work for them. But even though, and I'm grateful for all of that experience, it got to the point where I was feeling unfulfilled, but I didn't know where to look.
Mhm.
And I'd watched my father be an entrepreneur. When I say a forced entrepreneur, he was in a job, the recession hit. He had to set up on his own. He set up on his own and he worked really hard. Now, I was working hard and putting the hours in, but I wasn't getting the result that I thought I should have for the effort that I was putting in.
Mm.
Now, you could call it unskilled, or I just didn't have the awareness at that point. But I just thought, hey, this is my life and this is how I have to show up. This is what I have to do. And that unfulfillment, there was a longing and a discontent. It was hitting me hard in 2019. And then I had a health diagnosis, which then kicked me into gear. And I still believe to this day it was the gift that was required for me to
Oh,
go on a journey.
I literally
And
just I got chills on that. And so something that comes to mind is, the universe, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I call it universe. I call it uni, like we're besties. But the universe is always talking to us, right? And so I've heard it in three different ways that like it'll be kind of like dangling of a feather, kind of just whispers of it's time to change direction. If we're not listening, then we'll get hit by a brick. And if we're still not listening, then it's a boom like a Mack truck. And your quote, wake up call was this health diagnosis. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about that. And then now we're going to get into shifting paradigms to realize, holy cow, I'm a conscious creator of my reality, my health, my finances, my real everything.
yeah, and that's what had happened to me. So it was the morning of the 1st of August 2019. The reason I know the date is it was my twin boy's 10th birthday. We were about to have 15 kids coming over for a party. I'd gone to the hospital. I'd had some blood tests before that, and I thought it's a virus or something. But I wasn't feeling great. I had a lot of pain in my shoulders, and at times, just previous to that, what triggered this, I was playing football in the garden with them, and I felt like I had this like 100-pound weight on my chest. And I can still remember my boys circling around me going, "Are you giving up? Are you giving up?" Because I just couldn't go anymore. And I'm a fairly competitive father. I push them a little bit, but I also give a little bit. And I just couldn't go. And my wife was like, "You need to go see someone." So that morning when I went in for the diagnosis, there was a panel of doctors sat there, and I thought, whoa, this is not going where I thought it would. And if it's a virus, I'm sure you don't need five people to tell you. And they said, "You've got bone cancer." And immediately there was like a light switch that went on inside me to go, right, we're going to figure this out. So the first question I asked was, how long have I got? And they said, we don't know, but it's pretty severe. So I was like, okay, more than 2 weeks. And they're like, oh yeah, yeah. So okay, cool. I've got 2 weeks to start looking for some stuff. But I had to go home and tell my wife. So obviously for the other person, it's always, especially the way I was feeling for the other person, it's a lot harder. But we decided to soldier on, and we kicked on and had the day with the kids, but we didn't tell my younger children for probably 3 years. We just didn't feel they needed to know. So for me, I was like, okay, I'm wanting to look for a solution. And initially, the doctors had said, you'll start a chemotherapy treatment. And I started it, and I was feeling terrible, sleeping till lunchtime, not feeling great. But I was looking, what's this about? And I'd never been a spiritual person. I'd always been grateful for things, but and fairly calm and fairly easygoing. But I was very focused on drive, push harder, push harder. The harder you push, you'll break through at some point. But I've been pushing hard for 13 years and not breaking through.
Question on that, because we're in a society that's addicted to stress. So even then, that pushing, struggle, efforting, proving creates stress and burnout, which is the number one cause of dis-ease in the body, right?
And I'd been doing that since I was a child. The
Ugh,
only thing
yeah.
was I was projecting to the outside world that everything was okay, but internally I was holding everything in. And
Okay.
I learned I was holding it in my bones. Now, if you'd have said
Literally.
to me at the start of the journey, I'd have gone, that's woo-hoo, that's not it. But I was able to go on a discovery journey to go, hey, I was holding it in my bones, and I was manifested bone cancer, dis-ease.
Yep.
So then it was a matter of, okay, who's going to help me understand this and turn the ship around?
In comes Bob Proctor, right?
So a month later, I'm on Facebook, and this advert pops up from a wise old gentleman that I'd never seen or heard of before. And he said, your way's not working. Why don't you try mine? And I thought, he's got a pretty good point there. So I clicked on, had a look at what he was saying. He took me through a video of the subconscious mind and worry, doubt, fear, holding on to things, causing dis-ease in the body. And I went, whoa,
Yeah.
I can't tell anybody else that's what I've been doing, because that's what I've done for 40 years. But that's exactly what I've been doing. I need to get closer and understand what this guy knows. Straight away dived into his work, and he said, tell me what's going on. This is something in your mind. You can turn this around, but you got to tell me. And I said, I've been holding this stuff in since I was a kid. He goes, great. Okay, now we're going to release that. And you're going to go on a journey and turn this around. And he was so convincing. And I'd seen enough evidence that other people had done it. So I was like, I'm in.
Okay, so time out. I want to break that down a little bit. Number one, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, and Bob Proctor was able to help you shift paradigms. So I want to help define that. But what's so important is you didn't go the regular route, right? Chemo and medicine and drugs, that you literally self-healed bone cancer. Now, anybody interested in this, Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches it deep dive and overcoming so many health issues. But you created belief, you had a mentor, now you have conviction, you found evidence, and that's what I imagine kept you going in this direction, right?
Absolutely. So I got up every single day before my family woke. It was a new habit that I created. I was up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and I spent the first hour reading material or listening, understanding the subconscious mind, understanding the paradigms, understanding what I was doing. Now, when I say studying, it wasn't like intense university study. I would sit, and if I read something that resonated, I would think about it. If I read something that I didn't understand, I would stop and go over it a few times. But one of the things he taught me was, don't try and read a whole book looking for the answer in a week. Read one chapter at a time and reread it and reread it. So I would spend a week just rereading sometimes the same chapter 7 times if I could get through it. So the message was going in. But I did actually start the chemotherapy treatment and did it for 3 months. And again, I know the date because it was the day before my birthday. I thought, I'm not doing this anymore.
Mm.
And my wife could see in my face that I was up to something. And I said to her, this is making me feel terrible. I'm not. And she said, why don't you stop? And I said, I'm glad you've said that because I stopped yesterday. And she goes, I know you. I knew you would. She said, but in one condition, if this gets worse, you're back in and do what the doctors say. And I said, yeah. But I didn't go and tell the doctor. She was an Eastern European woman and feisty. So I was having blood tests every 3 months. So I had a blood test at that point, and she said, things are looking a bit better. My blood counts were changing and shifting. 3 months later, I go back again, and she's like, whoa, it's all working fantastic. I was
And there
thinking,
was,
I've got to
and
tell her, and I haven't been taking the drug. And I thought, I'm not going to tell her. We went another 3 months,
wow.
and she went, you're in remission. She said, everything's been working fantastic. The drug's been working great. And I went, got something to tell you. She said, what? I said, I haven't been taking the drug since November last year. And she went, you don't know what you're doing. Now, when I say this, the hospital and her team were unbelievable, because even having the blood test was measuring me, and I'm so grateful for them, and they help so many people. So I'm not here
Right.
to say, hey, if you've got something wrong, this is the way you do it. It's the way
Yeah.
I did it.
Right.
And I've seen too many people that have done it. I also lost two friends in the previous 2 years to cancer who went through chemotherapy and treatment. They got told they were in remission. They got hammered again with more chemotherapy, and then they passed away. And I was like, I'm not going down that track. I'm
Yeah.
seeing my kids grow up, and I'm spending time with my wife.
But even that, no. So just at a high level, we could talk about the power of placebo and nocebo. And so there's a book, The Placebo Effect, actually by Dr. Joe Dispenza. And there's a story in there, and I'm only bringing this up because I heard it on a YouTube video yesterday, somebody retelling the story. And it's the power of the nocebo, which is opposite of placebo, positive expectation or belief. Nocebo is negative expectation or belief. Somebody was, quote, diagnosed with a serious health issue. It might have been cancer, I'm unsure, and died 30 days later because they fell into the fear and the woe is me. Found out after the guy died, he was misdiagnosed and didn't even have the whatever the thing was. And that's how powerful the mind is. So here's what I want to talk about. If anybody's new to this, or I mean, since you were so involved in Bob Proctor's work, first of all, let's define what is a paradigm and what is your subconscious mind, and why would we want to reprogram it?
For sure. So a paradigm, really, the word that I always used was your conditioning. I couldn't get my head around that word. Initially, it was too advanced for me, so I was always conditioning. And I looked back to the conditioning I had had as a young child. I had young parents. They were 17 when they had me. Fantastic people, but they had their paradigms.
Right.
And once I'd learnt this work, I could start to look back and have a look at the behaviors and the patterns and conditioning they picked up off their parents that they then passed on to me. I was just very receptive to it, whereas my sister wasn't as receptive to it. So that conditioning and those habits that they had, which might have been being reactive or whatever it may be, certain habits they had, I picked up on them. And then I would go very introverted with it and hold it in my bones because I didn't want to cause any problems or
Mm.
and it again they didn't know that, and it's not their fault or anything like that. They were doing the best they could with what they had, but as parents and even co-workers or whatever, we've almost got a responsibility to have an awareness to know sometimes some things you say or do or the way you act can really impact somebody
Yeah.
and put their life on a different trajectory.
So we could talk about paradigm at a high level, the idea that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. You're talking about conditioning, our programming. A lot of people, it's just they want to, it's generational wealth or generational poverty. And so a lot of people, I think a good example is Oprah, who comes from nothing, completely shifted her paradigm and went on to make billions.
Yeah.
And so we either match our programming, or a lot of people, we have these life experiences in which we change the trajectory, right?
Yeah. I think what people can learn is we've all got a paradigm, and it comes from our environment around us, and it's heavily influenced by the people that we grow up with. It's also then some events along the way, and some of them unpleasant. quite often. It doesn't, everybody's version of unpleasant is different, but it's those events that put you on that path where you've got to. And one of the things I learned through one of my mentors was about forgiveness, like letting go. It's the only way you can move forward. Well, I wanted to be a forward moving person. So it was like, okay,
Yeah.
and some forgiveness for myself for some
Yeah.
of my behaviors and actions, but I was doing the best I could with what I had at that point.
So, okay, Dr. Bruce Lipton explains our subconscious mind is, if you want to know, because you know the sayings out there are the conscious mind is 5% of the picture, subconscious mind is 95% of what's running the show. And how Dr. Bruce Lipton describes it is that your life is a printout of your subconscious programming. So, for example, you know, like you have subconscious programming that is empowering you. So, areas of life that are working well for you, amazing, you have programs to reflect that. But a lot of people who the struggles I see are like the top three ones, right? Health, finances, relationships. So now you may have programs that are disempowering you, creating financial lack, struggles in relationships, and sabotaging your health, overeating, etc. So can we talk about, especially, you know, maybe if it was in business for you or even this health condition that you corrected, how do we become aware of and then reprogram?
Yeah, for sure. So my first test of this was my first vision that I had was playing football with my boys. So I was in the garden. I wasn't well. They're running rings around me. Dad, are you giving up? And it was a vivid moment where I was like, this is not how I pictured it was meant to be. When I started to actually visualize me playing football with my boys, we're rolling in the grass and we're playing more often and it's fun and the sun's out and I could smell the fresh cut grass. And this was my vision for 3 months. And truthfully, at the start of me doing this, I didn't see a lot happening in my external world. Then the blood test said I was improving, which then made, okay, things are definitely working. And then quite quickly, I could feel that I was not in the pain that I was in. Fast forward to me getting better, fast forward to me playing more football with my boys, and we talked about the universe delivering something before. Their coach of their football team had to move away, so they didn't have a coach. And some of the parents and my two boys had said, Dad, would you coach? And at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. And then I was like, no, this is something you've been delivered to you. You asked that you wanted to play more football with your boys. Here's an opportunity. We now play football every Tuesday, every Saturday, every Sunday. I've got 17 more surrogate sons who I absolutely love. They'd always been an okay team, but not really won much. And the other coach was a super guy, but these boys just didn't have a belief in them. So I used and applied some of these principles once I started working with them, just mainly to say, hey, let's make mistakes. The quicker you make mistakes, the faster we're going to move. And there was one kid in particular that did it. He got it. So we used him as an example. And then they went on the following season to go undefeated the whole season.
Wait,
And
time
the
out. That,
same bunch of kids. All
yeah.
we done was change their belief in it. But what I noticed in that moment for me learning of this stuff was kids don't have the baggage that we do. They can get it quickly.
Yeah.
And when you apply it and see, especially teenage boys do it, you go, whoa. And then all of a sudden in me, it was driving me to go, hang on a second, if they're getting it this quickly, I need to let go of some of this baggage and believe as well.
You know what's coming to mind? Are you familiar with the 4-minute mile rule?
Yeah.
Okay, so if someone doesn't know what we're talking about,
Yeah.
Roger Bannister back in, I think it was
He's British.
54.
He's British.
Okay, I think it was 54. It was in 1950s. Roger Bannister was the first human to break a 4-minute mile. And it was believed, so this is the power of belief, right? It was believed that a human did not have that potential or capacity, and that literally the heart would implode. And Roger Bannister, not only he did it, so now he proved it was possible. Thousands of people have done it after the fact, and there was no major change in technology or health or shoes, right? He created belief. So even like the player on the well, we call it soccer, right? The player on the football team One kid got it. Now he's proving evidence. And even like for you, somebody who could overcome health by changing their beliefs, somebody who could make seven figures. Now we're creating all this evidence of what's possible.
Yeah.
I just
All
think
of a
that,
sudden,
go ahead.
all of a sudden now I realize that you can create your life. You can make a life by design rather than by default. And
Oh,
up to
yes.
that point, I was living a life by default.
Mm.
And this was the gift that I required because I wanted to help more people. So I never, and sometimes I speak to people and they go, they may have not seen me for a while. They go, how are you? How's your health? I go, fantastic. I'm feeling amazing. And that was one of the greatest gifts I've ever had. And they go, what? That was bone cancer. Were you not scared? And I was like, I was in this journey of discovery that was just incredible. So no, not at one point was I.
Well, and that's perspective, and there's so many things. Okay, what you just touched on, I think it's important to emphasize. I don't know who I first heard it from. It might have been Abraham Hicks, but the idea is if you're living in autopilot, going through the motions, and you're more or less living unconscious, you are living life by default. Life is happening to you. When the truth is, you can live your life by design, conscious, mindfully, intentionally, have, be, do, experience anything you want. But like there's a shift there, right? There's a gap that you have to overcome. So for those people who are feeling the lack of fulfillment, longing for more, lack in their finances, whatever, can you please help? Or, how would you coach someone through? What are some steps they could take to gain clarity, vision, change beliefs, habits, intentional practices?
Yeah. First and foremost, and you hit on the three areas before your health, your relationships, and your wealth, is get a crystal clear vision of what you would love. That's the best question you can ask yourself. What would I love? Because too many of us stay in a box and go, well, I think I'm only capable of this. Don't think like that.
Yeah,
What would you love? So my vision was I would love to play more football with my boys. I didn't know the universe was going to deliver me something that was even better than what I'd visioned,
right.
but I took it. And the same for me with business. Then I went, okay, I would love to help more people and make an impact. That was the longing and the discontent I had. I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I created a vision for it. And then I started taking steps. And the same principles happened. The first couple of months, things just weren't really happening. But we've talked about persistence. I was persistent because I was like, I know this is going to work. I believe it. So I had to build a bigger believing, even in my work situation, even though I'd overcome a life changing event. I still had to, okay, some of my old paradigms and my old conditioning were still coming in from a business perspective, some
Yeah.
battle scars that I'd had over 13 years of running an agency to go, okay, this is a new business now. Can I get this off the ground? And once we got momentum, we were off and away. And I was visualizing and seeing the people that I wanted to work with. And then a pattern started to appear. And then as I got clear on that pattern and who the people were, more and more came. And it was like the universe was going, okay, you're open and you believe this. Here it is. And I was like, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen and been part of. Is it where you want to keep going? Okay, I want to refine that a little bit. And it's a beautiful journey to be on because there's never a moment where you think, ah, I'm sick of this or I'm bored. It's like, wow, I'm getting to create this blank canvas and turn it into whatever I want. And the old version of me pre 2019 would never have done this. Never thought it was way over, thought it was woohoo. No chance. I was very logical, methodical, push harder. The harder you work, I think I even had a T-shirt at one point which said, "The harder I work, the luckier I get," or something like that. Ridiculous. But that was what I believed.
Well, okay, let's even talk about that real quick because, I shared with you LinkedIn's one of my largest platforms, and there are paradigms, since we've touched on that, there are paradigms, and like wearing a badge of honor, having stress and burnout, struggle, right? Nothing comes good unless you struggle and effort. So there are
Yeah,
beliefs that I have to struggle and effort. Can you give a personal example on maybe ease and flow and how you just
absolutely.
got into alignment and it's happening?
I spent 13 years in struggle and push, and you can get some results doing that. But the reality is there becomes a byproduct at the end of it. And that's what I got. I got a byproduct at the end of it that I was stressed and holding stuff in. And although the results externally looked good,
Yeah.
internally I was broken. If you really think about it and look back, hence going on the journey. And then even when I first learned about the ease and flow, it took me some time because I had a paradigm and conditioning that couldn't accept it. So I just kept reading. And if I landed on a particular chapter of a book or something that said, stay more relaxed, it will come to you. That included money. Money was a big paradigm that we had in our family. So it wouldn't flow to me, but I wasn't ready to accept it. Once I was able to actually understand it, okay, it started to come to me more in flow. I did look back and think, God, why did I push so hard for 13 years? Because it flows to me more now with a lot less effort. And literally, I only think about it in that day, what I'm doing. Not saying money, I'm talking about what I'm doing. And it's a secondary byproduct that comes from the service that I give. And it's such a much better place to live than where I lived for 13 years as a business owner.
Can you share more about that shift in perspective you had in for money? Because I think what I heard you just say is you stopped focusing on money. You created presence and like your actions and your energy behind it, and then money was the byproduct. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. So my vision that I created and what we touched on before, I got really crystal clear on who I wanted to serve and how I wanted to help them. And that still keeps evolving now. It probably took 3 versions, maybe 4 to get there
Yeah.
of it, but I started. And that was the hardest part was and I see this with other people that I associate with or work with, the hardest part is getting the start because you've never done it, especially for business owners. Write it down. And it's almost like, well, we don't want to. We're just going to turn up every day and keep doing stuff and being busy fools, and it will come. And it doesn't. Whereas you get this crystal clear idea of what you would love, then what happens is your brain starts to go, okay, for that to occur, I need to take this action step now. Now, even that can be a big challenge for people because although they would love something, the action step sometimes can be, oh, it's too fearful. I've never done that before. Or I'll try it once. And if I don't get an instant result, I'm stopping.
Yeah.
That was me. I used to do that. Then when I learned the tools of, well, actually, you take the step. And if it's a mistake, 13-year-old boys, if you make a mistake on the football pitch, it's okay. It's the next step I couldn't tell them that and then not apply it myself. So with work, if you think of the invention of the light bulb, how many mistakes were made to get there? And when you ask him, what about the mistakes? Oh, it wasn't. I just found 10,000 ways that didn't work.
Right.
And I always keep that in my head. When I'm trying something, I think, God, you've had 7 goes. Keep going.
Yeah.
And more often than not, it's not going to take 2,000 or 10,000 goes. You're always taking a step and learning from it no matter what. And that was one of the greatest things I had to learn through all of this because I wasn't patient.
Oh, patience is a big one. Okay, something I want to talk about. Again, I think it's a paradigm. It's a belief. Think about even when we're young, right? When we're sick, we got to go to the doctor. So we're so focused on external circumstances and needing to, okay, maybe it's the strategy. It's my sales and marketing. I got to spend more money. Let me give a real world example. So I had a call with this woman. She's a top realtor in her market, but she came to me and was interested in coaching. She was full of self-doubt, inconsistent, procrastinating. And then in the conversation, she's like, I need to spend more money on marketing. And I said, it has nothing to do with marketing. It's who you are being, full of self-doubt, inconsistent, and procrastinating. So can we talk about the power of needing to shift our beliefs, our emotions, and our habits? The external is a reflection of the internal. You don't smudge the mirror, you change the reflection.
Yeah. My primary business was doing paid advertising for companies. So a lot of people came to me wanting, I want you to solve a problem that I've got. I either need more leads or I need more sales. and you've got a vehicle that can get me there fast. And I've seen you doing it for other people, so I would like you to do it for me. That was basically how people would come.
Yeah.
And at times it would work, yeah, if they had a great product. And often you would see it would reflect the business owner. And then some would come to me where their businesses reflected the business owner and it wouldn't work.
Right.
And at times, some of them couldn't understand it, especially the ones that didn't have any spirituality behind them. They didn't realize, whoa, actually, I need to have a look internally at what's happening here. So when I'm working with business owners now, for instance, yes, we will use an element of digital marketing to either discover that there's a challenge or a problem or accelerate their business, but then go, hang on a second, what would you really love? Because your business is not a reflection of what you would love. And then they work through that part and go, okay, this is much better. And the amount of people that come and say, oh my God, I'm spending more time with my kids, or my wife actually likes me now, or I went on a holiday and it was one of the most fulfilling ones. I haven't done that for 15 years. That's the part when you see the power of this, because they can have a great business. They don't have to work the hours that they're working, and they can be fully present for the people that they love.
Okay, I want to ask you on a different angle. So we're not talking about business, but here's another pain point I see a lot. And as an example, in my opinion, TikTok is a dumpster fire. However, it is a social media platform. It is another reach and ability to create content, right? So I am on TikTok, but here's what I see a lot of people going on. And can we talk about the idea of a victim mentality, right? But
Mhm.
a lot of people talk about, oh, dating apps and it's so awful, and but everybody's so focused on a negative narrative. And literally this guy last night was like, oh, I'm back on Hinge. I don't want to be there. So I think a dating app, yeah, they're not that great. They are a tool that you could meet someone outside of your regular everyday stuff. But if you're going into it with a negative narrative and negative emotions and this never works, then can we talk about how that's the definition of insanity?
Yeah. I think number one, on social media, no matter what the platform is, it's grown to such a beast now that it is an offload for a lot of people. So even some of the accounts that we're working with, the negative comments are there. And it's usually when the business owner now has some of this understanding, they can go, okay, that's a reflection of somebody who wants what we've got, but can't have it, or doesn't believe they can have it. So it takes away that, oh, I've got to defend myself.
Mm.
But I had a friend who joined a dating app, an amazing person, hadn't had some successes in a relationship, joined a dating app on the Friday. Can't remember the name of it, but whatever, one of the big ones. Had a meeting with a coffee with somebody on the Saturday. She had a background where she loved sport. So she was quite athletic and loved the outdoors. His profile didn't say that he'd been in sport, but they went and had coffee. They got connecting over sport. The next day, she's flying over from Australia to here to see me. We've been mates since we were primary school. And she said, I think I've met the one. They're now married with kids. He was an ex-Australian Olympic skier. They live an outdoors lifestyle. But she went into it believing that she was going to meet the right person because some of her previous relationships weren't. It
Right.
literally was 2 days. She said, I was in the app for 2 days and out.
Well, but that's a different perspective and energy bringing it in, right? Having maybe they're at a space and now they're taking inspired action to create a profile rather than, nothing in my life is working. I'm bored and whatever, so I'm gonna go. So totally different energies.
The victim mentality. When I first learned about this, and I was being a victim in a particular situation, I always thought a victim was, oh, poor me, da da, and that wasn't me. As in, oh, everything's bad, life's bad, the apps are bad, whatever. But this particular situation, I stopped and went, oh, I'm being the victim. And my perception shifts straight away. And from that moment, I've always gone, if there's a particular situation where I either think I'm the victim or feel it, I need to take ownership. And it's always now when you watch the pattern, when people feel that and it's a negative emotion, whatever, rather than waiting for the environment or the circumstance to change, be that person in the center. And it's incredible when you do it, how just your energy shift can change the people around you, in particular children and your own kids.
Okay, so now I want to share one of your big wins. Since 2019, you've shifted, becoming aware and reprogramming subconscious and different way of being, right? You're living differently, different thoughts, different emotions. You shared with me that when you went into a coaching business, you grew it to 7 figures in a short period. How? What were you doing differently?
Initially, I was a little bit unclear on what I wanted. I knew I wanted to help people who had online courses, but it was very vague. And it started off very vague. Then, as I stepped out and was persistent and understanding the pain point was for these people, was okay, now I understand that I can start having discussions with them. An exercise that I did, so I think we had 20 students. So this was in my early part where I was doing it one-to-one. And I thought, there's a few here that I struggle with, and there's a section here that I love. And I drew a piece of paper and I put all the ones I love on one side and all the ones that give me challenges on the other. And I was like, what's their common trait? And I went, and they all had spirituality, as in not deeply spiritual, but they understood either personal development or they'd done something. The ones on the other side were, what can I get? How can you help me sell my program as fast as you possibly can so I can get money? And I was like, okay. So my filtering system changed then. I had a set of questions that I could ask that I went, okay. Then when I started doing my group programs, that was the advertising that I used to filter and get these people in. And I'd always had this vision that I wanted to make an impact, but I didn't have the confidence. I projected that I did, but I was like, I'm going to help other people who are making an impact. So a lot of my students were making big impacts on people, on families in particular. People who, one of my best case studies was a guy who helps families with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And he was able to grow, initially his reach, he was maybe helping 30 families. By the second year of us doing it, he was helping, but I was helping him do it, 250 to 300 families a year globally. But it's not the money that came from that for either of us. It was the testimonials that came from the families that had a teenage girl that had been adopted from Russia. The family that adopted didn't realize that she had issues. They were clashing for so many years. They go on his program and the family dynamic changes, and the 14-year-old girl comes on and gives a testimonial that says, my family's just the best thing. And you're like, okay, there's a deeper thing here.
Do you think what trips a lot of people up is trying to figure out the how, trying to make something happen?
Absolutely.
Okay,
One of the things I learned was to suspend the how. I was always a how person, and I had to have a perfect layout. If I was going anywhere, it was all green lights the whole way there. I had to have everything perfect before I did it, because if I didn't, it was a reflection on me, and it just never served me because it was never right. One of the things that I do now is I suspend the how completely. So create the vision and the target for what I would love. And then I break it down and go, okay, what's the first step that I can take today that's going to take me in the direction of that? And that's all I focus on.
And is that the part where presence has become a big factor in your life?
Yeah, definitely. I was always thinking way too far ahead. And pre 2019 with the cancer diagnosis, I actually had two bookends. One that went way too far back, thinking about my past and what I was holding on to, and one that was going way too forward, going, okay, I've been in business since I was 27. This is 13 years down the track now, and I'm still not achieving what I want to achieve.
Yeah.
I can't work any harder.
You know what that's making me think is like we're siphoning our energy and siphoning our potential because we're dwelling on the past, what's not working. We're fearful and anxious about the future when Eckhart Tolle tells us, the only time is now. So can we talk about, because you are so big on creating vision and doing the vision work, but for somebody who's so used to go, go, go and doing, and now you're asking them to step into more of the being. How do you balance that? Okay, I got to create a clear vision. This is what I want. What is their job today? because, they're trying to make it happen. So, okay, as an example, Abraham Hicks always says the how and the when, never your job. That, or like Neville Goddard would teach, when you live in the feeling of the end, wish fulfilled, living from the end, so already thinking and feeling it's done, then life's synchronicities and the resources will come to you. But that might be hard to grasp for
Well,
somebody who's so used to doing.
it was very hard for me to grasp at first, but I thought, and I always go back to what Bob said to me when I first met him, your way's not working, why don't
Yep.
you try mine? And I'm
Okay.
like, well, the way I keep doing it isn't working. And I actually think back to when I was a teenager and I was doing some stupid things, or, as teenagers do. And at times I used to think, maybe if I just did the complete opposite, I would get the
Ah,
opposite result. But I
ah,
had no awareness then. But that was what would go through my head. Now, what I do is suspending the how again and go, okay, that is my vision. My vision is to have an event one day in my local area. It's 1,977 seats. The reason why I know the number is it's the year of my birth. And I'm like, okay, I'm seeing myself. That's my big vision. Now, I know that's not going to happen tomorrow just because I've visualized it. What I know is, okay, what can I start doing? Okay, I can start sharing my messages on podcasts and meeting great people. Now, when I stepped into doing podcasts, bearing in mind I've done this work for 4 or 5 years, I was nervous. I didn't know what I'm going to say. What if they ask me a question that trips me up and I can't answer it? Oh
yeah.
my God, this is so scary. And I
Uh,
was like, just step in and see. Again, one of the greatest things I've ever done because I've met so many interesting people and been on very varied different types of podcasts. But now for me, it's like, okay, you've done it repetition now. And if you'd listen to, I'm not a big basketball fan, but if you listen to a Michael Jordan or a Kobe Bryant or Phil Jackson, his book, they do it really well. They just do repetition, repetition, repetition all the time. And it might sound boring and unsexy, but I used to jump from shiny object to shiny object and not get the result.
yep.
Now it's like, let's just do repetition. Do the repetition. And sometimes it is unglamorous, but do you know what? The result is always a lot better because you become more skilled. And I had to get used to that because I always thought, oh, I'll jump to the next thing. And I know from watching people in the groups that I was in, we were all doing it. Bought the next course. I bought the next course. And you see, especially since COVID, the amount of people that have bought $100,000 worth of courses and got no result in any of them, whatever you've spent, whether it's 10,000 or 100,000 or more, at some point you've got to stop and go, okay, there's one common thing in all amongst this, and it's me.
Yeah.
I've got to have a look at myself. And when you look at yourself all of a sudden go, okay, and we've got to make mistakes and accept, do you know what, it's part of the growth, but it's a different level of awareness now. I used to beat myself up when I made mistakes and petrified of making them. And I know that's the same for a lot of people. We get taught at school, big red X, focus on the red X, not the green ticks. Well, that's not the way to do it. And I implemented this into my family with my kids. So I've got 3 boys. And when I started to learn this work, I was like, right, we're going to shift this completely. We're not going to focus on their mistakes in the house or at school. Now, sometimes we are not perfect. We're human beings. We react to a situation where we're trying to protect them. But certainly with schoolwork, we've gone, don't even focus on it. The most important thing is you show up every day and just give it your best. And if you're happy with your best, you'll get the result that you want. And my kids live a very peaceful life with their schooling. They do well by their grades, but they're not under stress with it. And the amount of kids that I've seen come out of school stressed, and there's an anxiety level already being taught at that level. But
Yeah.
when they step into a job, they're already done before they get into their adulthood.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's start the work earlier in our own households.
I love that you're conscious parenting. That's something, that's amazing. Okay, here's what I want to know. What are some of your daily rituals or practices that help you stay on this path? Because I'm going to be honest and transparent. I'm human. I have off days. I have things that trigger or, I fall off track, but I have those daily disciplines and practices I can get back on. So what are you doing?
For sure. So my first thing on a morning is I always get up before my family for a couple of reasons. It's me time. I know I'll have no disturbances. And even if
Yeah.
it's half an hour, I like an hour. The first thing I do is go straight in and start reading something. And for me, I was an overthinker for a long time. Getting into a book, sometimes I just don't want to do it. My paradigm is fighting me, going, you don't need to do that. You never used to read when you were a kid. Stop doing that. It's feeding you good stuff. I'll read and it will always take me off on a journey somewhere. It'll allow me to do a bit of self-reflection. It'll allow me to learn a principle or go over a principle that I need to work on. My one at the moment is the present moment and now. So it allows me to anchor in and prepare myself for the day. I like to think of it like foundations. Prior to that, the first thing I always do is wake up, another glass of water, big glass of water straight away, filtered for anyone. Simple thing to add to life, but filtered. Do my reading. Once I've thought about something, I'll sit for 5 minutes. Now, I close my eyes initially and have a think about what I've just learned in that, and then how I'm going to apply that into my day. First person, I think about, how will I apply this with my wife? Sorry, how will I apply that with me? How will I apply that with my wife? How will I apply that with my children? And then my daily, whoever I bump into in the day. Once I've done the reading, I'll always do 15 minutes of meditation. And my meditation now is, I'm not somebody who wants to be a monk or teach people or say you've got to become a monk. Meditation to me is a form of just sitting in stillness. Now, again, it took me a long time. I had a very busy and overactive mind, an overthinker. And I know if I don't do this, I'm not preparing myself for the day. Whenever I get reactive, I haven't done it.
Yeah.
So I just do it. Make sure that I do the 15 minutes. It's sometimes I do guided. One of my favorite guided is a Joe Dispenza guided meditation. Talks about space, making space. And it just relaxes me. My one that I did for the longest was just my health for my body. And I often go back to that because I never want to neglect it. A couple of times, even after I was cured and off and away, didn't even have that in my vision, my health. And it took a coach to say to me, Leigh, considering what you've been through, do you think maybe you should put something in there for your health? I was like, Those are the most important things for me for the day. Then during the day, I grab any moment that I can to just pause. So I might be at traffic lights, I might be in a queue at the post office or the bank or wherever it may be. And I'll just grab a moment and go, okay, where are you right now? 2 questions I ask myself every single morning. What would you love and who do you want to be? And I try when I do that every time to think about myself first, because I used to put everybody else first. And I know lots of people do that and we think it's a badge to do it, but you can't put everybody else first if you haven't put yourself first. But it took, and hopefully people don't go to the level of the problem that I had to wake me up.
Right.
That's hopefully what everyone can get out of this today, is don't wait till you get to that point, because it isn't fun, and it isn't fun for a lot of people around you. But you've got an opportunity now to do something from today where you say, what would I love and who do I want to be?
I love those 2 questions. Dispenza is the one that teaches that, people create change in their life from 2 states, either from a space of just feeling inspired and motivated, wanting to grow and evolve, or the majority, unfortunately, from a space of suffering, health issue, bankruptcy, divorce, death. That's their wake-up call. So we get to choose, right? And we're all on our own journey.
Yeah.
I feel you have shared some valuable things today, and I would love to talk to you for hours. But what is one key takeaway you want listeners to get?
For me, it's the one I always return to for myself and I share with others. And it's, we're greater than any circumstance, situation, or environment that we're in. So if you are struggling in a relationship, if you are struggling with your health, if you are struggling with your wealth, know that you are greater than it. You just have to gain an awareness first of what your thoughts and your feelings and your actions are, and then start changing those, because we get more of what we focus on. And we're very, very good at putting a lot of effort into thinking negatively about all of those things, our health, our wealth, our relationships, and what our thoughts and our actions are.
Yeah.
You can put the same amount of energy into thinking about it. And a lot of it's the fear of, if I do it and I don't get that result. But if your way's not working, why don't you try mine? or
I,
my
I
mentors.
know, I love that. And I don't remember hearing that from Bob, but he's totally on point. I have to bring this for what you just said. So I was listening to on every morning at the gym, I listen to YouTube. So whether it's podcast interviews or teachings, whatever, like I'm always fully immersed, putting myself in that space. But one of the things this morning was a universal law, the law of polarity, that everything's a spectrum, that we live in a world of duality. So abundance or scarcity, health or dis-ease. And you know which quote Abraham Hicks says, which end of the stick are you holding based on your current circumstances? And so what you're saying is if you're in that unwanted end of the spectrum, know that the other end of the spectrum is also a possibility, but it's based on how we are thinking, being, and the actions we take, right?
Absolutely.
So
And
you have the power to shift.
sometimes we get caught up in the thinking part and stay there because it's comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You have to then move into the feeling and start seeing yourself taking the action that's required. So if you think of a lot of people that have weight issues, they can go in January and do it for 30 days. But what happens is eventually the 30 days, the paradigm starts kicking in going, you're not good enough. You shouldn't look like this. Da, da, da. You have to change the image in you first. And
Yeah.
that's the same for your health. That's the same for your relationships. That's the same for your wealth. My wife and I went through that with our relationship. We had a good relationship, but we wanted it to be great. And we had to start changing what that image looked like. And then it was like, wow, this is incredible now, the life that we're living, even with three boys, even though we're working, even though we've come through those challenges. And I had my own, she had hers. One of our sons had a challenge. He was probably picking up on the frequency of both of us at the time. When we had the skills, we were able, and again, him being a child, he was able to shift very quickly.
Yeah.
But pre those skills, that didn't happen.
Yes. All right, here's what I'd love to do to wrap up the interview. I have a couple rapid fire questions for you. First
Okay.
one being, what is a quote or motto that you live by?
Oh, I think the one that I shared with you, we're greater than any circumstance, situation, or environment we're in. And I like to apply that, especially in my day when I'm faced with a challenge. And as we're growing, we're always going to be challenged. So embrace that and then say to yourself, okay, I'm greater than this. I'm either going to learn a lesson from it or I'm going to step into it.
Yeah. What is a book you're currently reading or highly recommend, or maybe even like one that really stands out that has helped you in these last few years?
What I'm currently reading is A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle.
Okay.
It has given me a deeper level of getting into the present moment. It does stretch me a little bit mentally sometimes, but I'm good with that. But
Oh,
it has certainly made me stop and really have an appreciation for everything around me. Not, oh, that house is great or that car is great or material stuff. It's noticing the birds coming out at this time of the year, noticing that I'm going on a podcast and I'm meeting great people, noticing that the environment that's around me, the shop person that I spoke to the other day, we got into a deeper conversation about what he'd done and seeing him smile and being a person of increase in that moment. So,
mm.
yeah, really, really great book, New Earth.
Final question. What advice would you give your younger self?
If I could go back and speak to that boy that was probably a little bit holding stuff in, it would be, it's all going to work out. This is what it looks like as it's all working out. The tests that you're going to get are here to help you grow.
Yeah.
Just know that it's going to be okay.
Mm. I think that's a great note for all of us. Leigh, thank you so much for joining me and having this conversation.
Heather, I've loved it. Thank you so much.